How do shows get booked? Who decides if an artist plays a certain city, when they play that city, and which venue they play in that city? Who decides if they're going to play for Live Nation, AEG, for an independent promoter at the local performing arts center? How are those decisions made?
Live the life you love.
What's going on, y'all? Today, we're going to talk about how shows get booked. We're going to walk through the booking process and how that all comes together, right? How venues get selected, how dates get selected, and whatnot. So we'll get through the entire process from finding out about an artist that's touring to going on sale with a show. And I'll have some slides for the video version, but if you're listening on audio, I'll try my best as always to just narrate as best as I can. I believe I can explain all of this without the visual aid, but of course, if you want to check out the visual, definitely go to the YouTube channel. I have a custom link for that now. That's Making It Academy. Sorry, Making It Network.xyz. So Making It Network.xyz. And speaking of the Making It Academy, if you go to patreon.com/Making It Academy and you want to support this podcast, you can do it for as little as $1 a month. If you want a little bit more, we have a monthly video that we post as an archive for $10 a month. And then at the $20 level, you can actually join live workshops, 2 workshops a month where we go through all kinds of amazing things. There's all kinds of content, and you can get the archive of that on Patreon, and you get to join the ask the guest questions on the podcast for a little bonus session after podcast episodes, and much more. So hope to see y'all there. But please, if you can, support the podcast and the YouTube channel for as little as $1 a month over on Patreon. Or if you can't, you don't have the dollar to pitch in, that's cool too, right? Just subscribe to the channel wherever you're listening. Leave a comment. We'd love to engage with you on the comments. If you have any questions and topics we want us to cover, let me know there in the comments as well. But let's get on, how do shows get booked? So one day at House of Blues New Orleans, where I used to work, I'm sitting in the office with my boss and mentor, Sonny Schneido. And Sonny is the guy that opened a venue called Tipitina's in New Orleans in the 70s. And he also opened House of Blues in New Orleans as well. So he worked for the two most legendary venues, opened the two most legendary venues in New Orleans. He's actually the only talent buyer that's in the New Orleans Music Hall of Fame, because he's contributed so much to that whole scene. And also one more cool story for Sonny. If anybody's ever been to Tipitina's, or when you go to Tipitina's, when you see the posters there for old shows, the posters that used to be there, they got destroyed during Katrina. But Sonny kept a copy of every single poster of every show that he's ever done. And he donated his personal collection of posters to Tipitina's of all the old historic shows that happened there in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So next time you go to Tipitina's and you see those old posters from those old shows, those come from a guy named Sonny Schneido, who contributed those. But we're sitting in the office one day, and on my laptop, I'm booking shows, writing emails to agents, probably sending in offers, confirming shows, putting shows on sale, the whole process. And I turn around and I look at Sonny, and I'm like, Sonny, how did you book shows in the 70s? Because you didn't have email, you didn't have cell phones, you didn't even have fax machines, if anybody knows what a fax machine is these days. But Sonny pauses for a second and he says, you take a phone book, you look up the number for an agent, you call them, you negotiate a deal right there on the phone. A few days later, a contract shows up. You sign the contract and add a check for a deposit. A lot of times a very large deposit, right? Thousands of dollars. You send that back to the agency and you pray the band shows up. Yeah, you just pray the band shows up, right? Because there was no cell phones. Again, so if a bus breaks down in the middle of the tour, who knows, right? Who knows where the artist is? Who knows if they're even okay? So thankfully, the process is not that complicated anymore, not that scary anymore, because of modern technology. Of course, feels a lot safer to book a show these days, right? So anyways, let's go through the process. How does it all work? Before we get to the actual process, I guess it's important to know who are all the different players in the game. So first, you have the booking agencies. The booking agencies, they're the ones that represent the artist. And the big ones out there are CAA, Creative Artists Agency, one of the oldest ones. They've been around since the 60s, but actually the oldest one, or at least the big music agencies, is William Morris Endeavor, WME, which actually started as the William Morris Agency in, I believe it was the late 1890s, if not definitely the early 1900s. They were representing actors actually all kinds of artists and talent that used to perform on vaudeville, and they used to create competing shows with some of the big vaudeville promoters and represented actors like Charlie Chaplin in the first movies and so on. But anyways, I could go on that for forever. I have a whole class on that. But the other big agencies are UTA, which stands for United Talent Agency. You have APA, which is Agency for the Performing Arts. ICM, ICM Partners actually, and ICM Partners just about to be acquired by CAA though. So that'd be one less of the big agencies. And then after that is a few others that are pretty big. And I have I'll throw a link in the show notes and the link in the YouTube video description. But I have a link to an article called Careers in Music, and has a giant list of agencies and has all the big boutique agencies in there as well, like Wasserman and High Road Touring and a bunch of others. But there's all kinds of agencies, right? And these agents, the agents that work for the agencies, they represent the artist. They are the ones that are reaching out to venues and promoters all over the country or all over the world, wherever the artists are planning on touring. And they're the ones that are booking the shows with the venues, right? And we'll get into the process more in just a second. Then you have the artist managers. The artist managers, they work hand in hand with the artist, right? They're like the artist's business partner, their right hand person. They are, if you want to think of any kind of business, so the artist is probably the CEO, the business owner, and then the manager could be like the GM or CFO, COO, so on, right? They work hand in hand with the artist, and they're basically in charge of the entire operations of the business and trying to grow the business for the artist, the marketing, the branding, and so on. So how does that play into touring? How shows get booked? When an offer comes to an agent, the agent will send that to the managers. Maybe the manager will have certain parameters, right? Don't send me an offer unless it's 25 grand or more or whatever. So some offers may not ever reach to the manager, but typically the agents will send the manager an offer, and then the manager and the artist will decide. And then there again, right, the artist may have given the manager some parameters. I don't want to see an offer that doesn't meet at least these requirements. So that's kind of the part of the process. Then you also have your promoters. So for promoters, you have an important role in the booking process, which is called the talent buyer. And if you're at a theater or a non-for-profit organization or performing arts center, a lot of times the talent buyer can also be called anything programming. So programming manager, programming director, director of programming, all different types of titles. But essentially they're all the same thing. They're all talent buyers. And what a talent buyer does, they work on behalf of a promoter or a venue, and they negotiate the deals with the agents that of the shows they're about to book for the venue they work at, or for one of the venues they work with, if it's a promoter that works in outside venues or in venues they don't own. And what's confusing sometimes, if someone starts independently, completely independent, and it's their own company and they're promoting shows, but they're also negotiating with the agents and booking the shows. Their company is a promoter, right? It's promotions company, and the person booking the shows is a talent buyer. So they're kind of both. They're a talent buyer and a promoter. So that's what can cause confusion sometimes in terminology when people are starting to learn the business, right? So the talent buyers work for the promoters. They also work for venues. They're essentially the person that is booking shows on behalf of the promoter, on behalf of the venue. Now, go to the venues real quick. So as I explained, right, talent buyers are the ones negotiating with the agents on behalf of the venue. Also, sometimes they'll have, again, some kind of booking title, booking position, but I know a lot of times people refer to the booker, so the can also be a booker, right? So the booker for the venue as the booking agent, and that is incorrect, right? The booking agent works for the artist. The booker works for the venue or promoter, also again, town buyer or programming manager, and so on. Then also, I have this on here because borrowed a slide from another lecture, but you have your touring production companies that are on the road, production managers. You have production managers that work for the venue, production managers that work for the promoter. You have production managers that work for the artist, and then you have your touring personnel as well. So those are the people that tour with the artist, which we're not going to really get into today. But those are your tour managers, production managers, stage managers, techs, merch people, VIP people, right, and so on. So the next step in the process is the available dates. So how do we find out about available dates? Right? There's a few different, I guess, scenarios when an artist might tour. One of them is based on album cycles or music releases, right? Or releases of anything. And this could be, not just music, it could be comedy, it could be podcasters, it could be speakers, all kinds of different things that tour, right? Different types of shows that tour. And usually it's based around a release of something. So again, could be a book, could be a new, well, comedy's kind of backwards, right? So it's going to say a new comedy special. So comedy, they actually tour to practice their special that they're about to record, and they test material throughout the whole country or wherever they're touring. And as they're testing material, when they're all done with the tour, then they find a venue that they record at, right? So they're actually a little bit backwards, but it's getting based around something. It's based around them planning a new special coming out. So some artists that tour on a cycle based around some kind of release or bigger content piece that's going to be created. Clear my throat on the microphone again. Did that last time too. And some artists are just always touring, and many of those that are always touring, and especially comedians and country artists, a bunch of other artists, they're just always on the road, right? They tour around album cycles, but they're also always just playing shows. And a lot of them play like what's called weekend warrior runs, which is usually Friday, Saturdays, and sometimes it's Thursday through Sunday, right? So what they'll do, they'll meet wherever the meeting point is on Wednesday. They'll drive out to wherever they're going and play their first show on Thursday, their next show Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They might come home unless they're doing a show on Sunday as well. Comedians, they'll probably fly in on a Thursday night or Friday morning somewhere, do a show Friday, drive to the next city, do a show Saturday, and then fly out on Sunday, right? So that's how a lot of times comedians will book their tours. So again, some are always touring, some are just playing around album cycles or cycles around something that is being released. Now, who reaches out to who? There's a few different scenarios, but the two main ones is you have your established promoters or established venues. They constantly get the calls, right? So by getting the calls means either their phones are ringing or they're getting emails. People are reaching out trying to book with those promoters and those venues. And in that scenario, right, they're lucky because they have a place that everybody wants to play. They probably find out pretty much about any show that's coming through their area. Now, what I always say, if your phone is not ringing, you should be ringing someone's phone, right? So if you're not busy with shows coming in, then you are doing the outreach, or you're not as an established of a venue, right? So you need to compete with these other venues, or you're not an established promoter yet, and you need to compete with these bigger promoters. So you should be reaching out constantly to agents and working on building the relationship with the agents. There's a story I've told a few times, but I guess it'll be appropriate to say here if anyone hasn't heard it before. But there's a really cool platform called Pollstar.com. And on Pollstar, you could basically type in any artist and find out who's their agent, their manager, their record label, right? And contacts these people as well. What I always say, with great power comes great responsibility, the Spider-Man quote. To get your spidey senses. But when you have that contact information, it doesn't give you the right to just reach out blindly, right? You have to have some kind of reason and purpose to reach out. You are in the relationship business. You're trying to build a good relationship. And if you're just bombarding, harassing people with emails with no value to offer, they're not going to respond too kindly all the time to that, right? So there's one agent that I reached out to quite a few times when I first started the process. So on Pollstar.com, you also have what's called the Industry Hotwire. And the Industry Hotwire, what that does, it is a feature on Pollstar where you find out about all the new artist signings, right? These are artists that just signed with agencies, management companies, record labels, and so on. And there's one agency I would reach out to all the time. Every time there's a new signing, it was an artist that was a good fit for the Plaza where I was at that time, I would reach out to this agent and just try to get this artist booked, and never really got a response. One day he calls the office, and our office assistant picks up, and she says, "Hey, Chris, such so and so's on the phone." I'm not going to call him out on the podcast. If I ever have him as a guest, I will call him out in person because I think that'd be kind of fun. But well, I don't know some stories about this agent. We'll see. We'll see. But he calls, and I'm excited, right? The assistant transfers the phone over to me, and I pick up the phone. I say, "Hey, so excited that you finally called. Really love your artist. I think they're a really great fit for the plaza." And he stops me and he says, "Chris, I get a lot of emails from you." And I'm like, "I know, I'm sorry. Like, hopefully I'm not bugging you. Just really would love to work with you." He pauses again. He says, "Chris, you don't build relationships by sending emails. You build relationships by picking up the phone and talking to people or going to their offices and meeting them in person." And then he says, "I know you exist." And I think I skipped the part. And he says all the emails basically are really fucking annoying, right? And he says, "I know you exist. I know about your venue. When I have something that's a good fit, I will reach out, but please stop emailing me." And he just hangs up the phone. That was it. No goodbye, nothing. And my heart sank. I was like, I ruined it. I ruined the relationship with this agent. I'm never gonna get a call from this guy again. Thankfully, a few months later, he booked a show with our venue, and it was a show that was a sellout, sold out in advance. So I guess I got back in his good graces, and got to work together. And we've been in touch since that scenario, and it's been very respectful and very kind. So we can save relationships after something scary or terrible happens, right? So continuing on with the booking process, the next thing that happens, right? So you're finding out about available dates when an artist are touring, and if you're looking on the YouTube version, what you will see here is a calendar, and this calendar, right? So I have the August 2022 calendar on here. And if you look on the dates of August 2nd through 6th, I have a few artist names on there. So you have what's called venue holds, right? So my first hold on every date is a venue hold. I'll talk about that in a second. And then we have holds for Dax Shepard, Chris Rock, Foo Fighters, right? This is just a pretend thing. This is not a real thing. This is just something I made up as an example for this podcast. Then I have the Orlando Philharmonic Orchestra on here. I have a wedding rental on here as well, right? So what the venue hold is, let me start with that. So that's the first hold on every date, right? So whenever someone reaches out about a date, whenever order they reach out, so whoever reaches out about August 2nd, the first person to reach out about that date gets first hold. The next person that reaches out about that date gets second hold, and the next one gets third hold, and so on. On my calendar, sometimes I am as deep as 8, 9, 10 holds on certain dates when a lot of artists are trying to tour around that time, right? So those holds can be very deep. Now, why is my first hold a venue hold? So a lot of promoters and venues do this. What the venue hold does is when a really big show comes along, that's a guaranteed sellout or even an underplay, right? An artist that would normally play a bigger venue, but they're coming to your venue, that will be an underplay. When you have a really big rental opportunity where you can make a lot of money, you want to be able to take those big opportunities and skip them to the front. That's basically what everyone's doing, right? It's the venue hold is basically the venue's choice to book something that will keep them in business and that will make them money, right? We're in the business of making money, right? We're all entrepreneurs. We're trying to grow our businesses. We're trying to keep the lights on. We're trying to keep our employees, families happy and fed, right? And support our employees. So we got to make money. We can't just book shows that are losing money or take risks on shows they may not make as much money. So if we have big opportunities, we want to be able to skip them ahead. So that's why the venue hold exists. Now, when you send back holds, right? So in this example, I have Foo Fighters coming in and they're trying to hold some dates. And if you're looking at the video version, I made a mistake on one of the dates. They're the fourth artist on a date or label them as a third hold and two things as a second hold. But so just in case that causes confusion. But so say Foo Fighters wants to play my venue and their target date is August 4th. But a lot of times what agents will do, they will hold dates on either side. Sometimes just one date, sometimes two, sometimes multiple. So on this example, the agent for Foo Fighters, again, not a real scenario, is reaching out about August 4th and two dates on either side. So August 2nd through 6th. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to place holds, right? So the way I will send them is to say August 2nd, so 8-2 or /2 and then -3H is for anybody listening on audio. So August 2nd is a third hold, August 3rd is a third hold, August 4th is a fourth hold, August 5th is a fourth hold, August 6th is a fourth hold, right? So I basically will just send them an email back with the dates stacked on top of one another. So 8-2, 8-3, 8-4, right? Each individually, and then a dash and a hold position. I will usually do it as 3H, 3H, 4H, 4H, right? You can write it out as well if you want to do third hold. But when you're really, really busy, it just saves a lot of time just using initials, right? I mean, most agents will know, I mean, all agents know what you will mean by that. So that's how I will send the holds back. So that's the hold process. When someone wants to confirm a date, right? So let's say Foo Fighters is ready to confirm August 4th, but there's 3 holds in front of them. Technically only 2 because I have the venue hold. I could do one of 2 things. I could either just skip them ahead because I have that venue hold, or I could do the right thing, right? And reach out to everyone that's actually had reached out before them and challenge that date, basically. So I'll reach out to the agent for. So here I have in this example, I have Dax Shepard and Chris Rock again. Just a pretend example, I would reach out to their agents and say, "Hey, I have an artist that's ready to confirm for August 4th. Do you still want this date? If not, can we please release within 24, 48 hours, whatever your policy is, right? Or within 2 business days." Sometimes the agent will say right away, you can have a date. Sometimes they'll ask for a little bit more time. So you just try to work with everyone, but obviously it's also urgent that someone is confirming a date, right? And the reason they reach out for multiple dates, and artists like Foo Fighters, they're, any artist really, when you're going on tour, you're trying to book 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 dates, right? And now imagine as you're routing through the country, what you want to try to avoid is going from Atlanta to New York to Chicago, down to Orlando, over to Texas, back to North Carolina, right? You don't want to zigzag the country. So the reason you hold multiple dates and look at multiple dates is because the dates that you want at a certain venue probably won't always align. So you want to hold multiple dates and try to figure out, okay, how can you align everything perfectly, right? So if you're coming to Orlando and August 4th is the target date for Orlando, then hopefully you get Tampa on August 5th, Miami on August 6th, maybe Jacksonville up top on August 7th, right? Or maybe even Jacksonville on August 3rd coming in. But you kind of want just everything to line up as perfectly as you can. And sometimes dates may not be available. So you might zigzag a little bit, but try to keep the drives, reasonable for your artists, or you might shift dates around, right? Your August 4th target date will not happen in Orlando, so maybe you'll just take August 3rd, right? And or sometimes you'll just play a different venue, right? So that's how other venues may get an opportunity, or how independent promoters might get an opportunity. So just because you're competing against the Live Nation and AEG in your market doesn't mean that you don't have an opportunity to book some of these bigger acts, because they may not have a date available sometimes. And also, the way to look at things as well, if you're an independent promoter and you do lose a show to either another independent promoter or an AEG Live Nation, at the end of the day, it's good for your scene, right? For your local music scene, for, if you're in Seattle, like if you have multiple promoters competing for shows and multiple shows coming into the market and people are buying tickets to these shows, that helps the market overall, right? At the end of the day, I mean, don't take these things personal if you lose a show. The most important thing is the show still playing the market, regardless if it's your venue or another venue. Hopefully you get another show, right? There's thousands of artists, thousands of different types of shows touring. There's probably something you can fill a date with. You just gotta have to be creative and be persistent in reaching out for potential shows. So again, shows coming to your market is a good thing, especially when those shows sell. Now, the next thing that's going to happen after you have the available dates and you place the holds on the calendar, now you have to put together a forecast, right? And the forecast could also be a budget. You can also call it a projection. And the way I do it, if you're watching on the online version, I'll explain it again for anybody on audio, is I separate it by 2 main columns for my forecast or for my budget. One column is the potential column, and one column is the forecast column, right? So in the potential column, it's the maximum potential based on advanced ticket sales, right? So if the show sells out in advance, what is my total gross based on sellout? Then my forecast column is what do I actually think a show's going to sell, right? Based on whatever research I did. So some of the things you could do for research, You can get a Polestar account. So on Polestar, any shows that have been reported, you will find out an average gross, average ticket sales for shows. Some shows that have been reported, you can also, or if a show has been reported, you can also buy the box office report and see exactly how a show sold in a certain city, right? A certain venue, how many tickets did they actually sell? What was the gross? So if you're in Florida and you notice on a Polestar stats there is some reports from Florida or maybe some reports from the Southeast, might be worthwhile buying the report, right? If you're going to risk thousands of bucks, it's and to buy a report for $12.50 is totally worth it because it might avoid you putting out a giant guarantee for a show, right? So do your research. Another great research tool is promoters.bandsintown.com. You can create a fake ad and see how many fans there are for that artist in a region. You can look at data on Spotify. There is Chartmetric. There's all kinds of different platforms, right? You also look where else is the artist playing, right? Look at similar markets to where you are. So if you're in a market like the big markets are probably New York, LA, Chicago, maybe Boston, right? So those are your big markets. Like everything sells really, really well there. So if you're in Atlanta, maybe don't compare ticket sales from New York, LA, Chicago for Atlanta. But if you're in Atlanta, maybe you can look at ticket sales in Houston, maybe you look at ticket sales in Seattle and Denver, right? You can compare yourself to those markets. If you're in Orlando, you kind of will look at Atlanta, but also know that Orlando's maybe a little bit smaller of a market, right? Slightly smaller. Orlando's a pretty strong market, but some shows will do better in Tampa than Orlando. So it's really important. You always do your research. If you're a promoter on the promoter side, sign up for as many venues, email lists as possible, right? Venues throughout the country that are similar capacity where you're promoting shows, because you're going to find out what's coming through their venue and keep an eye on what's selling out at their venue, right? And keep those venues always top of mind. So you always are doing research. So in the future, you can keep really good notes. Then you know this artist sold out this venue and so on, right? So keep really, really good notes, do a lot of research, hire an intern to do this research for you. So in the forecast, basically what happens, you estimate all of your potential revenues, right? So your ticket revenue, then you take out your facility fees and taxes. I'll do another video in the future where we go through a full forecast. Then you figure out your guarantee, your venue expenses, and then if you have any other revenue streams, right? So what's called your ancillary revenue. So speaking of ancillary revenue, how do promoters make money? How do they make money? Do they make money on ticket sales? Seems to make sense, right? To make money on ticket sales because that's your big revenue stream. Well, Michael Rapino, CEO of Live Nation, he's on record several times talking about how Live Nation makes most of their money, and that's really how most promoters make their money. There's three main revenue streams. One of them is ancillary revenue. Ancillary revenue, that is your food and beverage. That could be parking, right? That's your main ancillary revenue. So food and beverage, parking, if you get a parking fee, maybe if you sell merch, right? You have some venue merch or promoter merch, that could be an ancillary revenue. You take a percentage from the artist's merch sales, that could be ancillary revenue. Then your next big revenue stream is sponsorships. One second. Now with sponsorships, the more shows you do, the more value you add to sponsors, right? So what sponsors look for is how many people can they reach by sponsoring your show or shows, right? So if you're doing a one-time show, just a standalone show, getting sponsors for that might be pretty difficult. But if you're doing 200 shows a year and sponsors have certain missions, right, based on their company, and they want to do a jazz series or a blues series, you can have sponsors sponsoring several shows, or a series of shows, or just sponsor your venue, right? Sponsor you as a promoter, where they now have access to potential all of those fans that you sell over, several shows or, dozens of shows. So the more exposure they can get, the better. And that exposure doesn't just have to be how many people can come into the venue. How many people can you reach with your marketing? If you have 50,000 people on your email list, well, now 50,000 people, right? So let's say you do a 10 show series and it's a 500 person venue. Say all the shows do sell out. That's 5,000 people, right? And that's maybe not be that big of a reach to a sponsor. But if your email list has 50,000, now it's at 5,000 plus 50,000. If you have a track record of how well you run ads and how big your retargeting audiences are, right? If maybe you have a maybe you're a promoter that does a bunch of different genres, right? So if you're doing different genres, one quick Facebook tip: you should probably create a different ad account for each genre, um, or at least group some different genres together, because what you want to do is keep that value of that ad account, right? So one ad account is your hip hop ad account, one of them is your rock ad account, the other one's your country ad account, right? And then what you want to do is you want to build audiences in those separate ad accounts, and if you have 20,000 people you can reach with your ads for a country show. Now you have your 5,000 people for the 10 shows, right? At 500 capacity each. You have your 50,000 people on your email list. And now you have another $20,000 you can reach through your ads. Maybe you put out 5,000 flyers for each show, right? So another 50,000. So that's where all of your impressions are, right? So the more impressions you can give or more exposure you can give a sponsor, the more valuable that sponsorship becomes. So sponsorship is your second big revenue stream. First one was ancillary revenue. And then the last one is ticket rebates. And for this one, let me go to the next slide and I'll explain it. But what you'll see on this next slide, I am pretending to buy a ticket for the J Balvin show at Amway Center in Orlando. And the ticket is $121. Then there is a service fee for $22.50, a facility fee for $3.50, and a order processing fee for $5. Now, the order processing fee, $5, probably all goes to Ticketmaster, right? The facility fee, $3.50, that will most likely go to the Amway Center. So, and the thing too, at $3.50 facility fee, that may not sound like a lot, but we're selling 10,000 tickets to a show, right? 10,000 times $3.50. That's a lot of money. So that's a big revenue stream too. So that's another ancillary revenue actually. Then your service fee, $22.50. So the venue's already gotten a cut. The Ticketmaster's already gotten a cut from the order processing fee. So what happens to that $22.50? So there's something called a ticket rebate. The rebate is a cut from that service fee that the contract holder gets, right? So the contract holder could be the venue. Most of the times it is the venue. Sometimes it could be the promoter. So whoever holds the contract with the ticketing company will get a cut from that service fee. So from that $22.50, it could be a big cut. I mean, it could be half of that, right? It could be that some ticketing companies will have some kind of standard, so they're probably going to add 5% on top, and then you can increase that. You can do 10%, right? Or you can do 15%. I've seen as high as 15, 16, right? 16%, right? I've even seen higher than that. But if you take $22.50, just do some quick math on my phone. But if I took the $22.50 and divided by a ticket price, $121, that's 18%, 18.5% service fee, right? That's insane. It's like tipping at a restaurant. So you're paying 18% service fee on top of this ticket, plus your other fees, right? So from that $22.50, I'm gonna say at least half is going back to the venue, maybe even more. Sometimes it's more than half because Ticketmaster says a smaller percentage. If it's a Live Nation venue, maybe they'll get a bigger cut from that since Live Nation owns Ticketmaster. Or you will notice sometimes if it's a Live Nation venue that Live Nation owned and operated, you will see the service fees for the exact same shows, same ticket price will be lower, right? So you might see a show in Orlando and the service fee is $22.50, and then there might be a show in Tampa. Let's say they own the venue in Tampa. Now the service fee is only $15, right? So that's kind of some of the potential conflicts of interest that are being created by a giant promoter also owning a ticketing company. But anyways, I mean, if people are willing to pay it, right, then they're going to continue to charge it. But so that's where venues get their cut, right, or promoters get their cut. So let's say take half of that facility or that service fee. It's $11. $11 times 10,000 tickets, a couple hundred shows or events per year. That's a lot of money, right? So that's where most of their revenue comes from. So those are the three: ancillary revenue, which is your F&B, your parking, could be your facility fees, sponsorships, and ticket rebates. Another thing too, if sometimes when promoters do shows at arenas, what they might do to make it easy, they will just give the promoter what's called a promoter rebate for every ticket that's sold, right? So instead of saying you're going to get a cut from facility fee or from service fee, you're going to get a cut from maybe the facility fee, you're going to get a cut from the bar, you're going to get a cut from parking, right? Instead of doing all of that and getting all complicated and getting the promoters into their business, because now they have to look at the numbers, right? How much parking did you bring in? What's the percentage? To make it easiest, what they might do is they'll just give the promoter what's called a promoter bump or a promoter rebate, and that could be a flat amount, right? So let's say it's $5 per ticket or $10 per ticket. I've seen at arenas that could be as high as $10 a ticket. So every ticket that sells, the promoter gets $10, and that's another revenue stream as well. Then the next step in the process, so we talked about how money is made, right? We looked at the forecast, and then the next step is the offer sheet. So you're going to put together an offer, some of the things that'll be on the offer sheet, and I can probably do a video in the future about this, going through the offer sheet. But some of the information you want on there is, of course, who's the headliner, right? Who's the offer for? Who's the opening act if you have them? Who's the promoter? Where's the venue? Is there a co-promoter? What date was the offer made? What days the show for? Where's the city? What agency is it? One agent's name, their phone number, their email, anything else that you want to include, right? And other, so you could be the agent's assistant, maybe. Then you have your terms, and most deals, and I'll do a video on that, and maybe I'll throw a video on or a link to my show deals videos where you can like see all the different types of deals. But most deals these days are what's called a versus net deal. And the way these are written out, so to say the guarantee is 40,000, right? So it'll say $40,000 guarantee versus 85% of gross box office receipts after all fees, taxes, and expenses. Anybody watching the video, I know it says 90 on my sheet. The reason I say 85, because that's pretty much a standard. If it's a bigger artist that can demand more, they'll probably say 90%, right? Sometimes I've heard scenarios like where U2 will take 105%. And the reason it's 105 because they know the promoter is making money from other revenue streams, not really from tickets. So that's like it's like the artist getting a cut from what the promoter gets as well. Or in scenarios like where Taylor Swift tours, she gets a share from everything the promoter makes, right? So they just split everything 50-50. So all different types of deals. But that's the next step in the process, right? So you got your available dates, you put together your forecast, now you put together an offer, and you send that offer over to the agent. You can put an expiration date on the offer. I typically put 14 days. Most of the times it takes them much longer than 14 days. You can also sometimes send mutually agreeable date offers if an artist might not be touring. So let's say you reach out to an agent about a specific artist, they're not currently on tour. You can ask them, can I send you a mutually agreeable date offer? And what that means is whenever there is a tour being planned, now if both you and the agent agree on the date in the future, then that offer applies, right? Or let's say you're in Chicago, you send in a mutually agreeable date offer. Next week, a promoter from St. Louis sends in a mutually agreeable date offer, and then that's later that same week they get one from Minneapolis. And now the agent's like, wow, I should do a 3-4 city run. So they'll reach out to their artist and say, hey, I have 2 or 3 offers in the same region. Do you want to play a couple shows? And that's another way tours can happen, right? Then we talked about the date challenge, right? So the offer goes to the agent, they send it to their manager. That's how they have all the offers for all the places they're going. They put all the offers together and they start challenging dates. They're probably start in the beginning of the tour, start challenging and clearing dates off the calendar, start confirming things all the way until the end of the tour, right? And figure out and throughout the process, how are things lining up? So let's say everything's been cleared and challenged. Now what's going to come out is the announced schedule. So now the agent, which is usually determined, but anyone could be the agent, the manager, the label could be involved, the artist could be involved, right? Those are all the different people that can be involved in the process of deciding when is the show going to announce. And it's usually announced with a tour, right, with other dates. So they're going to announce an entire tour. And that's determined by the artist team. Again, it could be the agent, manager, label, artist, right? All those people could be involved, or any combination of those people could be involved in deciding when our show is announced. Then you have your pre-sales, right? So let's say for an easy example, let me see, this Monday is going to be the 24th, right? So I'm recording this on January 22nd, 2022. So timestamp it. And on Monday, the 24th, we're going to announce, right? So a lot of times announces are on Mondays, sometimes on Tuesdays. And then pre-sales can pretty much start right away on Monday. And then your public on sale, when it's on sale to the public, is usually on Fridays, right? So let's say we announce on Monday, and the first pre-sale that happens, the artist has a Patreon and they have a bunch of Patreon subscribers. So they might give exclusivity to their Patreon. So on Monday is the artist Patreon pre-sale. Then on Tuesday, and that's going to run all the way until either Thursday night or up until on sale on Friday, right? Then on Tuesday, you have the artist email list pre-sale, right? So if you want those pre-sale codes from artists, join their Patreon or be part of their email list, and that's how you can get a lot of times these pre-sale codes, right? Then let's say on Wednesday we have a sponsor pre-sale. Let's say City Card is sponsoring a bunch of shows for a promoter, and City Cards gets a sponsor pre-sale on Wednesday. Then on Thursday is the venue and the promoter pre-sale. Now they're going to email their lists for opportunities for their email subscribers to buy tickets. Then on Friday, when the show actually goes on sale, there's no more good seats available because of all these freaking pre-sales that happen, right? So that's why a lot of times when you try to buy a ticket to a show, so let's say you're a fan, the reason those tickets are no longer there is because they all sold in the pre-sale. And they always leave a certain percentage of tickets for the public on sale, but a lot of times, yes, the good seats will be already gone, right? So by the time the show goes on sale to the public, you already have seats on StubHub or SeatGeek or wherever else you buy tickets in the aftermarket. But that's pretty much it. That is the booking process. So, just to kind of sum it up, you have your available dates, right? Your, I guess, the artist team planning when the tour is happening, or they're kind of always touring. You have the available dates that are where they're going, when they're going somewhere. Then you put together your forecast, or also known as your projection or a budget. Then based on that, you put together an offer. You send the offer to the agent. If they like your offer, they're going to get ready to challenge the date to try to confirm the date with you. Then you get your announced schedule. You announce your show, you have your pre-sales, you go on sale. And big tip, as a promoter, if you're a promoter, even if you're independent, you should always figure out a way to build your own email list, right? Because that's going to bring you value as a promoter. If you always just rely on the venue to sell tickets and they get all the emails, then you're never really going to have any value to offer, right? So if you go to a venue as a promoter and you already have thousands of emails on top of the venue's thousands of emails, that's a really, really big advantage. So figure out a way you can collect email addresses from people that go to your shows. Some venues will share that with you, some venues don't. So maybe try to negotiate some kind of pre-sale where you do get the email addresses and where you can reach out to your own email. So get creative with that. Maybe there's something you offer at the show to collect people's emails, right? So get really creative to be able to collect people's contact information. And then what happens next in this whole process? Your marketing begins. You have marketing plans you submit to the agencies. You start executing your marketing. You're monitoring your sales. You're sending ticket counts to the agencies probably a daily basis or twice a week, right? Or Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And depending on the ticketing platform you have, you can automate those ticket counts so you don't have to bother with more emails and sending those ticket counts to everyone. That'll just automatically go from your ticketing provider to whatever email addresses the agency wants those to go to. And then let's say everything's going well, right? There's no issues, and we can talk about issues in a future episode, but about 4-6 weeks out, you start beginning your advanced process. So that's when someone on your team, usually your production manager or you, right, or whoever your promoter rep is, or your venue production manager or your tech director, someone reaches out to the tour, usually the tour's production manager and tour manager, and they start going over all the details for the show, and then your show happens. And hopefully it sells out, and you should send your agent a settlement sheet that night or the next day. And yeah, that's the booking process, right? And there's many other details we can get into, other videos we can create in the future, like show advances, different types of deals, and so on. But if anybody has any questions, leave a comment on the video. If you're listening to the audio version, hit me up on Instagram or go to the YouTube video, right? So again, the link to the YouTube videos or YouTube channel is makingitnetwork.xyz. And if you go to makingitwithchrisg.com, you get the links to all of our social media platforms right there. You can DM me on Instagram. That's pretty much the only place I check my DMs. And I hope you all enjoyed this episode. Please share it with anyone you would feel will benefit from this episode. Again, subscribe wherever you're listening. You can support the podcast for as little as $1 a month on Patreon. And you can also get all kinds of other cool perks and courses and workshops that we do over there. We just have Micah Davidson, who's on a podcast before, do a 2.5-hour workshop for our students, and they loved it. The promoters and the artists that are part of the academy, they learned so much from Micah. He was such a great guest. So if you want to get access to that, go to patreon.com/makingitacademy. And I'll probably post a snippet from that a 10-15 minute snippet from that 2.5 hour workshops, so you guys can get an idea of what those workshops are like. They're really, really cool, and everybody learns a ton. But yeah, I hope you guys learn a ton from these videos here, those free videos here on YouTube as well. I appreciate you guys' support here. And until next time, spread love, positivity, and kindness in the world, and go see shows, meet people, make stuff. Peace, my friends.